Have you ever wondered why some people are constantly ignored, while others seem impossible to replace? Why one person can disappear for months and everyone still waits for their return, while another answers every message instantly, does every favor, gives away every secret, and somehow becomes invisible? The answer has almost nothing to do with talent. It has almost everything to do with value. And value is born from scarcity. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He knew that the world rarely respects what it gets without effort. People protect what they almost lose. They admire what they cannot easily possess. And they chase what refuses to chase them. If you stay until the end of this video, you'll understand one of the most dangerous principles of power ever written. A principle that explains why generous people are often overlooked, why successful people guard their time like treasure, and why becoming less available can completely transform the way the world treats you. Because the greatest mistake most people make is believing that giving more automatically makes them more valuable. It doesn't. It often makes them disposable. Once you understand why, you will never make yourself cheap again. Imagine walking into a luxury jewelry store. Behind thick glass sits a watch worth $200,000. No one touches it, no one casually tries it on. There are security guards, locked displays, appointments, waiting lists. Every detail communicates one message. This is not for everyone. Now imagine the exact same watch lying inside a discount bin at a roadside market. Same materials, same craftsmanship, different presentation, different perception. Its value immediately collapses. Nothing changed except accessibility. Humans work the same way. Most people think respect comes from kindness, but respect comes from perceived value. And perceived value comes from limitations. The more available you become, the easier you become to overlook. Machiavelli observed this long before psychology existed. He watched kings, generals, merchants, religious leaders. He noticed something strange. The leaders who constantly tried to please everyone eventually lost everyone's respect. But those who controlled access to themselves, those who revealed only what was necessary, those who understood timing, became unforgettable, because mystery creates imagination. Scarcity creates demand. Boundaries create value. Think about your own life. Who receives endless phone calls asking for favors? Usually the person who never says no. Who gets interrupted every 5 minutes? Usually the person who always makes themselves available. Who becomes everyone's emotional dumping ground? Usually the person who believes being endlessly helpful earns love, but it rarely does. Instead, people begin expecting your time, your attention, your energy, your generosity, not appreciating it, expecting it. That is one of the cruelest transitions in human relationships. What was once appreciated slowly becomes assumed, and what becomes assumed loses its value. There is a reason expensive restaurants never beg customers to enter. Luxury brands rarely shout. Powerful people don't explain themselves endlessly. The highest value things in life don't chase attention. Attention naturally moves toward them. Meanwhile, people desperate to be liked often spend years advertising themselves, explaining themselves, defending themselves, proving themselves, trying harder, talking louder, giving more, only to receive less. Because desperation lowers perceived value faster than failure ever could. Machiavelli wasn't teaching arrogance. He wasn't encouraging selfishness. He was teaching control. Control over your availability, control over your emotions, control over your attention. The moment other people realize they have unlimited access to you, your value begins to decline. Not because you're less intelligent, not because you're less talented, but because human psychology confuses accessibility with abundance. And abundance rarely feels precious. Look at water. In places where water is everywhere, nobody thinks about it. Leave the desert. Suddenly, a single bottle becomes priceless. The object didn't change. The environment changed. Its scarcity changed. Its perceived importance changed. The same applies to you. If your advice is always free, people ignore it. If your attention is endless, people waste it. If your loyalty requires no effort, people gamble with it. Then one day, you wonder why nobody respects you. The answer isn't hidden. You've accidentally taught them how much you're worth. Most people negotiate against themselves before anyone else even speaks. I'll do it. No worries. It's okay, I don't mind. Take your time, whenever you're free. Slowly, piece by piece, they donate every valuable part of themselves. Then complain nobody values them. But value cannot exist where there are no boundaries. Boundaries are not walls. They're price tags. They quietly announce, this part of me is earned, not bought. not demanded, earned. One of the greatest lies modern culture teaches is that saying yes makes you kind. In reality, constantly saying yes often means you're afraid. Afraid people will leave. Afraid they'll become angry. Afraid they'll choose someone else. Afraid you'll disappoint them. Fear disguised as kindness. Machiavelli recognized this weakness instantly, because anyone who fears losing approval becomes controlled by whoever gives approval. And once another person controls your emotions, they control your decisions. Power quietly changes hands, without a fight, without an argument, without you even noticing. Power isn't always taken. Sometimes it's volunteered. Every unnecessary explanation, every apology for having standards, every sacrifice made simply to avoid conflict. These are tiny withdrawals from your personal authority. Eventually, your confidence account becomes empty, and you wonder why people walk all over you. It's because you've been paying them with your self-respect. Think about the people everyone admires, the truly respected ones. Notice something. They don't instantly answer every message. They don't attend every invitation. They don't join every argument. They don't explain every decision. Silence becomes their filter. Time becomes their currency. Attention becomes their investment. And because they spend these resources carefully, everyone else begins valuing them more, not less. Scarcity creates significance. Noise creates exhaustion. Silence creates gravity. The strongest people understand something almost nobody else does. Every yes costs something. Every hour given away can never be recovered. Every emotional argument steals energy. Every unnecessary relationship consumes focus. Life doesn't only pay you with money, it also pays you with attention. And attention is far more limited than wealth. Money can return. Time cannot. Energy cannot. Peace cannot. That is why powerful people become extremely selective. Not because they hate people, because they understand economics. Not financial economics, psychological economics. Attention is limited. Presence is limited, which means they must be invested wisely. Most people spend these resources like children given unlimited candy, scrolling, arguing, people-pleasing, trying to rescue everyone, trying to impress everyone, trying to explain themselves to people committed to misunderstanding them. And years disappear, dreams disappear, confidence disappears. Because cheap attention attracts expensive consequences. Expensive attention attracts valuable opportunities. Imagine if every hour of your day cost $1,000. Would you spend 40 minutes arguing online? Would you answer meaningless texts immediately? Would you continue friendships built entirely on guilt? Probably not. Yet your time is worth even more than money. Because you cannot earn another lifetime, you only receive one. Machiavelli would say the highest form of wealth isn't gold. It's control over your own time. And those who protect it become priceless. Now ask yourself something uncomfortable. Who benefits the most from you staying cheap? Who benefits when you answer every call before finishing your own work? Who benefits when your schedule belongs to everyone except you? Who benefits when your emotions can be manipulated with a single compliment or a single insult? Certainly not you. The world rewards those who protect their value. It exploits those who constantly give it away. That is one of the harshest truths Machiavelli ever understood. Power does not begin when others respect you. Power begins when you finally respect yourself enough to become selective. There is a reason gold is kept inside vaults. Not because it is fragile, because it is valuable. No one leaves gold lying on the sidewalk. No one hands diamonds to strangers. No one apologizes for locking away something precious. Yet every day, people hand out their attention, their loyalty, their emotional stability, to anyone willing to ask. Then they wonder why they feel empty. The problem isn't that you've been giving. The problem is, you've been giving without standards. Giving without judgment. Giving without observing whether the person has earned what you're offering. Machiavelli believed generosity without wisdom eventually becomes self-destruction. Think about the sun. It shines on everyone. But no one can reach it. It gives life, without becoming available. That balance is power. You can be kind, without becoming easy to access. You can be compassionate, without becoming someone's emotional servant. You can love deeply, without abandoning yourself. Many people confuse boundaries with cruelty. They are not the same. Cruelty is hurting others for your benefit. Boundaries are refusing to hurt yourself for theirs. There is a difference. A massive difference. Most people spend their entire lives auditioning, trying to prove they're worthy of friendship, trying to prove they're worthy of love, trying to prove they're worthy of opportunities. But people with true value don't audition. They observe. They evaluate, they choose. Notice how dramatically that changes everything. Instead of asking, "Do they like me?" they ask, "Do they deserve access to me?" That single question changes the balance of power. Suddenly, you stop chasing approval. You start protecting peace. You stop begging for attention. You start investing attention. And people notice, not because you announced it, because your behavior quietly changed. Human beings are remarkably predictable. They often overlook what is constantly available. Parents know this. Teachers know this. Employers know this. Relationships prove it every single day. When appreciation becomes expectation, respect begins to disappear. This isn't because people are evil. It's because familiarity slowly erases wonder. That is why mystery has always been powerful. Not fake mystery, not childish games. Real mystery, the mystery created by discipline, by emotional control, by refusing to narrate every thought inside your head. Machiavelli understood that people imagine far more than you could ever explain. Silence allows imagination to work for you. Over-explaining destroys it. Have you noticed something about influential people? They rarely reveal every plan before it happens. They don't announce every goal. They don't post every achievement. They don't explain every absence. Why? Because unfinished goals attract unnecessary opinions. Loose lips invite interference. The more people know, the more opportunities they have to influence your direction, some intentionally, some accidentally. Either way, your focus weakens, power leaks away. Sometimes silence isn't secrecy. It's protection, protection of momentum, protection of confidence, protection of purpose. Imagine planting a seed. Every morning someone digs it up to check whether it's growing. What happens? It dies. Dreams work the same way. Every time you expose them to people who doubt, mock, or secretly compete with you, you disturb their growth. Not because opinions are magical, but because your own confidence is still developing. Protect your vision until it becomes too large to ignore. That is not deception, that is wisdom. One of Machiavelli's greatest observations was this: people judge more with their eyes than with their understanding. They respond to appearances long before they understand reality. That's why composure matters. That's why confidence matters. That's why emotional discipline matters. Because people cannot see your intentions. They only see your reactions. Lose your temper, and they see weakness. Beg for attention, and they see insecurity. Explain yourself endlessly, and they sense uncertainty. Remain calm, remain measured, remain deliberate, and suddenly they begin assigning strength to you, even before you've spoken. Your emotional control becomes your reputation. Expensive people are not expensive because they own luxury cars. They're expensive because access to their mind is rare, because their word means something, because they don't promise what they can't deliver, because when they commit, they follow through. Scarcity without substance is manipulation. Scarcity with integrity is influence. That's an important distinction. Don't disappear to play games. Disappear because you're building. Don't become unavailable to punish people. Become unavailable because your mission demands your attention. Purpose creates natural scarcity. Pretending creates temporary attention. Only one lasts. Imagine two men. The first says yes to every invitation, accepts every distraction, answers every notification, lives entirely according to other people's schedules. The second politely declines most invitations, works quietly, speaks carefully, protects his mornings, protects his evenings, protects his attention. 5 years later, which one has built something meaningful? Which one commands respect? Which one seems impossible to replace? The difference wasn't intelligence, it was discipline. Discipline quietly compounds, just like interest in a bank account. Every protected hour becomes future success. Every wasted hour becomes future regret. And regret charges the highest interest of all. The world is filled with people who want unlimited access to limited individuals. If you don't decide your priorities, someone else will. If you don't guard your schedule, someone else will spend it. If you don't define your value, the world will happily discount it. And discounts become expectations. The first time you lower your standards, people thank you. They expect it. The third time, they become disappointed when you refuse. That is how people slowly become prisoners of their own generosity. Not because generosity is wrong, because generosity without limits invites entitlement. Machiavelli never suggested becoming cold. He suggested becoming impossible to manipulate. There is a profound difference. Cold people push everyone away. Powerful people simply refuse to surrender themselves. They still care, they still love, they still help, but they choose carefully. Because they understand one timeless truth: Your attention is the most valuable currency you will ever possess, and once you spend it, no force on earth can give that exact moment back. The question is no longer whether people value you. The real question is, have you been treating yourself like something priceless, or something that anyone can have for free? Because the answer to that question quietly shapes every relationship, every opportunity, every conversation, and ultimately, your entire life. There is a sentence most people never say out loud, but they live by it every single day. If I keep giving more, eventually they'll appreciate me. So they answer every late-night call. They solve problems that were never theirs. They carry burdens they never created. They forgive disrespect without accountability. They make themselves smaller so other people can remain comfortable. And then they wait. They wait for gratitude. They wait for loyalty. They wait for respect. Years pass. Nothing changes, because respect is not the reward for endless sacrifice. Respect is the reward for clearly demonstrated value, and value cannot exist without limits. Think about a masterpiece painted hundreds of years ago. It hangs behind glass, climate-controlled, protected by alarms. People travel across continents just to look at it for a few minutes. Now imagine someone prints 10 million copies and leaves them on every street corner. What happens? The image stays exactly the same, but its perceived value disappears. Scarcity never changed the painting. It changed the way people felt about it. That is exactly what happens when you make yourself endlessly available. You haven't become less intelligent. You haven't become less loving. You haven't become less capable. You've simply removed every barrier that reminded people your presence was a privilege. And privileges that become rights are no longer appreciated. Machiavelli understood something modern psychology continues to confirm. Human beings often confuse effort with importance. The harder something is to earn, the more meaningful it feels. The easier something is to obtain, the more quickly it is forgotten. That is why people celebrate climbing mountains, not walking across parking lots. That is why championships matter more than participation. That is why difficult conversations create stronger relationships than comfortable lies. Effort gives things weight. Ease often removes it. So ask yourself, have people earned access to your deepest thoughts? Or have you handed them away simply because they asked? Have people earned your trust? Or have you offered it before observing their character? Have people earned your loyalty? Or have you mistaken attention for commitment? These questions separate emotionally expensive people from emotionally bankrupt ones. There is another dangerous habit that quietly destroys value. Explaining yourself again and again and again. Every decision becomes a speech. Every boundary becomes a debate. Every absence becomes an apology. Every no becomes 3 paragraphs long. Why? Because somewhere inside, you still believe permission must be requested. Machiavelli would recognize this immediately. Someone constantly explaining themselves is not communicating. They are negotiating for approval, and approval is one of the most addictive substances on earth. The more you depend on it, the less freedom you possess. Freedom begins the moment you become comfortable disappointing people, not intentionally, not cruelly, but inevitably. Because every meaningful life disappoints someone. When you choose your purpose, someone will call you selfish. When you protect your peace, someone will accuse you of changing. When you refuse manipulation, someone will claim you've become cold. Notice something fascinating. The people most upset by your boundaries are usually the people who benefited the most from your lack of them. Read that again. The people who complain when you start respecting yourself were often the ones profiting from your self-neglect. That realization changes everything. A lion does not announce that it is dangerous. It doesn't post reminders. It doesn't argue with hyenas about its status. Its behavior speaks first. Its presence speaks louder than its voice ever could. Humans are no different. The strongest people rarely advertise their strength. They demonstrate consistency, calmness, discipline, reliability. Over time, those qualities become impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, insecure people constantly attempt to convince everyone they're important. Power never needs to introduce itself. Only insecurity does. There is a reason silence makes some people uncomfortable. Silence forces imagination to take over. When you stop explaining every move, people begin wondering what you're building. When you stop chasing attention, people begin noticing your absence. When you stop reacting to every insult, people begin questioning their assumptions. Silence is not empty. Silence is strategic. Every unnecessary word is an opportunity for misunderstanding. Every unnecessary reaction gives someone information about your emotional buttons. The less predictable you become, the harder you become to manipulate. That is not deception. That is emotional discipline. Imagine your attention as a kingdom. Every notification is someone knocking at the gate. Every request is another visitor asking to enter. Now imagine opening the gates to absolutely everyone. Eventually, the kingdom fills with strangers. Resources disappear. Chaos spreads. The people who truly belong can no longer reach you because your attention has already been consumed. That is exactly how modern life operates. People complain they have no focus, no energy, no peace. But they leave the gates open all day. Protecting your attention is not selfish, it is survival. Because your future is built from whatever consistently receives your focus. The world trains people to measure wealth in money. Machiavelli measured wealth differently. He measured it in influence, control, choice. The richest person is not always the one with the largest bank account. The richest person is often the one who can decide who enters their life, what receives their energy, and what deserves their time. That is real freedom. Because freedom without discipline eventually becomes slavery to distractions. Every distraction whispers the same promise. This will only take a minute, but minutes become hours. Hours become weeks, weeks become years, and suddenly, the life you wanted exists only inside your imagination. Not because you lacked ability, because your attention was rented out to everyone except yourself. One day, you will realize something almost heartbreaking. Most people were never asking for all of you. They simply accepted whatever you kept offering. It wasn't always malicious. It was human nature. If someone continually gives without limits, most people stop asking whether they should take. That is why your standards matter. They teach people how to interact with you. Every boundary is an instruction. Every exception rewrites that instruction. Every compromise becomes tomorrow's expectation. You are constantly training the world how to treat you, whether you realize it or not. And perhaps the greatest lesson Machiavelli leaves us with is this: never confuse being needed with being respected. A tool is needed. A servant is needed. A machine is needed. Need alone does not create dignity. Respect does. And respect begins the moment you stop asking, how can I make everyone happy? And start asking, what kind of person am I becoming? Because in the end, your greatest asset is not your talent, not your intelligence, not even your ambition. It is your ability to remain rare. In a world where everyone is desperately trying to be available,